On behalf of Serenity House Impact Youth Prevention Program, my name is Brian and I would like to thank you for joining me. Today, I will shed some light on a critical issue affecting our youth and community worldwide. The opioid crisis is one of the most pressing public health concerns of our time. Today, we're going to dive into the hidden dangers of opioids and the deadly deception of fentanyl. Let's start by understanding what opioids and fentanyl are. Opioids are a class of pain-relieving drugs derived from the opium poppy plant, and opioids apply their effect on the brain by binding to specific receptors called opioid receptors, which are located throughout the central nervous system. These receptors in the brain are designed to respond to natural opioids produced within our body, such as endorphins, which play a role in pain relief and mood regulation. However, opioids from an external source, like a prescription painkiller or illicit drug, can bind to these receptors, leading to various effects in the brain and body. In other words, can cause addictive behaviors. Fentanyl is also considered an opioid. However, this drug is a synthetic opioid, meaning it's been chemically altered in a laboratory rather than being derived directly from the opium poppy plant. So, a drug like fentanyl is much more potent than other opioids. In fact, it's roughly 50 times more potent than heroin, which is an illegal substance in most countries, and possession, distribution, or even using heroin can lead to severe legal consequences. So, fentanyl's potency is staggering. It's so powerful that even a small amount can lead to a fatal overdose. Take for instance this picture here. We see a lethal amount of fentanyl compared to a life-size penny. It really doesn't take much at all to cause fatal harm. Illegally manufactured fentanyl is often mixed with other drugs such as heroin and cocaine, but it could be laced in almost anything, including edibles. This means it puts users at a severe risk without their knowledge. The misuse of opioids has seen a dramatic increase in recent years, leading to addiction and devastating consequences for individuals and families alike. Many prescription opioids are being misused or abused without proper understanding of their addictive nature. Often these potent opioids were prescribed without doctors properly informing patients about their addictive nature. Let me state that again. Often, these potent opioids were prescribed without doctors properly informing patients about their addictive nature. People might not even realize they're consuming fentanyl when seeking pain relief after injury or surgery. So let's discuss the potential risks of a prescription opioid. As a reminder, a prescription opioid is a type of medication that is prescribed by a healthcare professional to manage pain. Some of the more commonly prescribed opioids include oxycodone, hydrocodone such as Vicodin, morphine, codeine, which is often combined with other medications such as Tylenol 3 or cough syrup, and yes, even fentanyl. However, it is important to note that fentanyl is a Schedule II controlled substance in the United States and in many other countries, meaning it has a high potential for abuse and addiction. As a Schedule II drug, it is highly regulated, and its distribution, use, and possession are strictly controlled. Let's take a look at some of the risks that are involved when taking opioids if you're not careful.
My oxy has always worked so great for my pain. Then I started needing more to make it go away.
Ativan helps my anxiety, and Percocet helps my pain. I take them both.
People told me if I liked morphine, I would love fentanyl. They were right.
I've been sober for 3 years, but this back problem is painful, and my doctor suggested opioid treatment.
These are voices of people at high risk to overdose on opioids. Too many Americans die every day after taking too many of these medications or drugs. The most important thing we can all do is to arm ourselves with knowledge. If you know the situations that make a person more likely to die by overdose, you can be part of the answer. You can save someone's life. First, the person at the highest risk for overdose suffer from opioid use disorder, a serious medical condition. They are dependent on their pain medicine or on an illegal drug like heroin, which means they need more to get the same effect, and they feel withdrawal symptoms when they cut down or stop using. One especially risky time for people with opioid use disorder happens when they experience a change in their tolerance. If people haven't used for a while, and if they take their old amount, it's more than their bodies can handle. This can be fatal. Second, combining opioids with alcohol or any medication that slows down your heart and breathing is extremely risky. Some of the medication that puts people at the highest risk of opioid overdose if taken together are benzodiazepines, or benzos, which have names like Ativan, Valium, Klonopin, and Xanax, and can be prescribed for anxiety, panic, or sleep. Other high-risk medication when combined with opioids include the hypnotic Ambien and the pain medication gabapentin. It is extremely dangerous to combine any of these substances with opioids. People who do are among the most likely to die from overdose. Third, people who are prescribed high doses of opioids by their doctors for pain are at high risk. Another risky time is when there is a change in type or dose of your medication. Different types of opioids can have very specific effects, and may be dangerous if someone is not used to the new medication. People using opioid treatment for pain should check in with their providers on a regular basis about any specific changes or reaction to the medication. Fourth, those who inject their opioids are at higher risk to overdose. This is true whether the opioid is prescribed by a provider or if it is obtained in another way. Finally, people who have overdosed in the past are at higher risk to have it happen again. Also, people using opioids on their own or without a medical provider monitoring their treatment are at a greater risk for overmedication or overdose. We can all be part of the answer to this national problem. Know the conditions that put people at greater risk of accidental overdose of opioids. If you know someone who fits any of these categories, say something. Let him or her know you are concerned and want to check in with them. You may save that person's life.
It's important to note that sharing medications could easily start a negative reaction. It could cause severe issues to your respiratory system, along with other potential allergic reactions. This ultimately could have lethal consequences. In general, you should never share or use someone else's medication, regardless of what they say or how you feel. It's not worth the risk taking medication which was not prescribed to you. It's crucial to understand the importance of responsible use, so make sure you always consult with a healthcare professional, a parent, or a guardian before taking medication. So, how does one become addicted to opioids, and why are they even prescribed? Well, let's imagine that you unfortunately get into a serious accident where you end up breaking your hip. You will be rushed to the hospital and doctors will begin to pump your body full of morphine, which is basically heroin just in a more pure state. So, morphine is an extremely powerful pain-relieving drug. As the weeks or even possibly months go on, you will have consumed loads of morphine. And as you continue to recover, the opioid receptors in your brain will have chemically altered to allow faster connections for the effects of this drug, which means once you stop taking morphine, your body will begin to experience withdrawal. In some cases, doctors might continue to prescribe opioids to help people cope with the withdrawal symptoms, along with actual pain that you might be feeling after recovering from, say, a broken hip. You see, a doctor's job is to heal and make you feel better. And in many cases, this is the driving force behind why pain medicine is so heavily prescribed. Doctors work off of a pain scale. Maybe you've seen something like this at your doctor's office before. Depending on the level of pain, it could determine what kind of medicine or maybe treatment that you might receive from your doctor. Most doctors want to help their patients, yet unfortunately, the pharmaceutical companies that have profited off of opioids gave false advertisements and claims that their drugs were safe, and so many doctors fell victim to these claims, offering the seemingly harmless drugs to their patients, only to later learn just how addictive and harmful they can be if misused. This just shows the lack of education about opioid use disorders and maintaining a false perception of safety among some individuals. So if you leave the hospital after having broken your hip and for weeks or months you have been receiving morphine and now your doctor's going to prescribe you an opioid to help you recover, you might be at a higher risk for drug addiction, whereas before you might have never even gone down this path. Now, there are alternatives to taking opioids that doctors are aware of and should in most cases offer a solution. However, Some of these alternatives, like physical therapy or rehab, might be more costly compared to taking pills. This means that many people are still being affected by the negative effects of opioids due to cost efficiency, lack of resources, and knowledge. The struggle for many people who might have already become addicted to opioids is that once their prescription runs out, they may go back to their doctor asking for more pills, but their doctor may not prescribe them anymore because, one, the patient may not need them because they're quote-unquote healed, or the doctor is just taking precaution because they don't want them to become addicted. However, if this person is already highly addicted to opioids and can no longer receive them legally by their doctor, then sadly, it's more likely that they will try and find a substitute by going onto the streets to buy counterfeit pills or even heroin because of how cheap and accessible it really is. The reason why people use or even abuse opioids and fentanyl lies in their ability to manage pain effectively, along with providing a euphoric high depending on the dose. However, this seductive promise ends up masking the potential for severe addiction and harm. Opioid misuse can lead some individuals down a dangerous path. As we know, it is much easier for someone to transition into using heroin or other hardcore drugs once they are already addicted to opioids. And as I stated before, heroin is frequently laced with fentanyl, turning a devastating situation into a lethal gamble. The consequences of opioid misuse are far-reaching and heart-wrenching. Countless lives have been lost, families shattered, and communities affected. It's a crisis that demands our urgent attention. The illegal production, distribution, or sale of fentanyl is a significant issue worldwide. Illegally manufactured fentanyl, often made in covert laboratories, is frequently mixed with other drugs such as heroin or counterfeit prescription pills to increase the potency and create a more significant effect on the user. This has led to an increase in overdose deaths and public health concerns in many regions. If you were ever curious how fentanyl can be easily distributed into other drugs, here is a short video explaining the process.
So 2 milligrams is the generally accepted lethal dose amount of pure fentanyl. That is such an incredibly small amount that in that vial was a representation with sugar of just a couple grains to show how incredibly small 2 milligrams actually is. In the realm of somebody who doesn't have access to that, a business card weighs about a gram, so about 1/500th the weight of a business card by way of volume is the approximate lethal dose of something like fentanyl. I'm just going to put in a little bit of the pink sugar as a representation of the fentanyl if it was in the mixture. Just something as simple as a magic bullet blender like this is typically what drug traffickers a lot of times will use to mix up this stuff. And you're going to see areas very, very quickly. That area there, a much heavier concentration than say that area right there, not overly far away. So again, you can see some pretty heavy amounts in here of the pink as a representation, and areas with a lot less over there. So this would represent, even if a drug trafficker was able to mix it up to a proper ratio, if they're not going to properly dissolve it or mix it properly, as in something like this, you're going to see areas of higher concentration that are easily fatal.
Hotspots are tablets that have more than 2 milligrams of fentanyl. Some of the tablets that we've actually been seizing in Calgary have ranged from 4.6 to 5.6, which is very high, obviously. The machines required for the tableting of the pills, as well as the powder, are being imported from China. The items that you see behind us have been seized by the Canadian Border Services Agency in Vancouver at their mail center. I think there's a demand for opioid drugs in our community, in our society. Over-prescription from medical doctors is one reason. Fentanyl is at, if you look at the continuum of opioids, it is at the far end. A lot of the other drugs, such as oxycodone and morphine, aren't as powerful. When people become addicted, they're looking for a more powerful high, and unfortunately, fentanyl is very toxic, and it's very at that end of that spectrum.
Bear in mind that from this video, they are using a pink powder substance to show how the fentanyl would be distributed if blended with other drugs. However, fentanyl is white, which means it would not be as easily recognized if blended with, say, heroin. So there's a much higher risk that when purchasing counterfeit pills or even buying illegal drugs off the street, you could be receiving something that has a high dose of fentanyl and you wouldn't even realize it until it's too late. Since we know that most counterfeit pills and heroin are laced or even cut using fentanyl to increase the potency, this definitely puts people at an extremely high risk for overdose. One of the best analogies I have for this is imagine making a batch of chocolate chip cookies from scratch. So once you have the dough ready, it's time to add the chocolate chips. And once you pour all the chocolate chips into the bowl, you start to mix it around. Personally, I love the mini chocolate chips versus the big ones. But once you've mixed everything together, you will begin to scoop out the cookies and put them on a cooking tray to bake. So when you do this, are you taking note of how many chocolate chips are in each cookie? Probably not. If you wanted to make sure that every cookie had the same amount of chocolate chips, this would be a pretty hefty job set before you. And imagine doing this blindfolded, right? That's basically what it would be like for the drug dealers when making counterfeit pills. So in most cases, we just scoop the cookies onto the tray and start to bake. We don't really take the time to worry if one cookie has more or less chocolate chips. So one of these cookies might have 4 chocolate chips while another has 7. This is basically the same process when a drug dealer is cutting their pills. There's no guarantee that every pill will be the same dose. So this will ultimately lead to a higher risk of overdose deaths. So people who are illegally selling and distributing fentanyl have found ways to disguise it to appear less threatening. Fentanyl pills disguised to look like Smarties candy have been found throughout the country, leaving many parents and children unaware of the potential harm.
A call to action in the battle against fentanyl. School officials alerting parents nationwide about children becoming targets of the synthetic opioid, considered 50 times more potent than heroin. The DEA issuing a warning about rainbow fentanyl, which looks like colorful candy, saying it's been seized by authorities in at least 18 states.
Recent data has documented that we've seen about a 40% increase in the number of deaths among teenagers and young adults due to this very potent opioid, fentanyl.
This nurse practitioner's warning going viral on TikTok.
In the past 24 hours, my local hospital has lost 11 people to fentanyl poisoning. Of the 11, 6 were under the age of 15.
Penn State University, school districts across Florida, Texas, and now overnight, the LA Unified School District, the second largest in the country, announcing new plans to fight this growing crisis, promising resources to schools, students, and parents. This after at least 7 teens in the Los Angeles area reportedly overdosed on pills laced with fentanyl over the past month, including the fatal overdose of 15-year-old Melanie Ramos at Bernstein High School in Hollywood.
So the phrase stranger danger has never been more important. Never take anything from someone you don't know or trust, and don't consume anything that you're not 100% certain is safe. But we can make a difference. Combating opioid misuse requires proactive prevention efforts, increased awareness, and responsible prescribing practices. The presence of fentanyl in illegal drug markets poses an imminent threat to people who already have a drug addiction. Recognizing these dangers is essential to protecting ourselves and others. So what can you do to help? Well, for starters, to prevent further harm, it's crucial to dispose of prescription opioids and fentanyl responsibly.
Unused medicines can spell many things. Risk, if they're taken by someone they weren't prescribed for. Harm, if accidentally taken by a child or pet. Danger, or even death, if not used as directed. Unused or expired medicines may be hiding right in your home, in bathrooms, kitchens, bedrooms, purses, and anywhere you store medicines. So why put your family at risk? Safely dispose of unused or expired medicines before they can do harm. There are many ways to get rid of them. The best option is to find a drug take-back location. This could be a local pharmacy or a police station. These take-back locations may offer on-site medicine drop-off boxes, mail-back programs, or in-home disposal products. DEA's webpage can help you find a take-back location near you. Just enter your zip code. If you don't have a drug take-back location near you, check the FDA's flush list to see if your medicine is on it. Medicines on the flush list may be especially dangerous with just 1 dose if they're taken by children, pets, or others in your home. Flushing certain types of medicines, such as opioids, helps keep everyone safe by making sure these powerful drugs are not accidentally or intentionally swallowed, touched, or misused. Remember, don't flush any medicine unless it is on the flush list. If you don't have a drug take-back location nearby and your medicine is not on the flush list, you can dispose of it in the trash. For medicines you dispose of in the trash, FDA recommends that you mix them with an unappealing substance, such as dirt, cat litter, or used coffee grounds. Don't crush pills. Then, place the mixture in a sealed plastic bag before throwing it away. Scratch out personal information from the prescription label on the empty packaging. For complete details and instructions on safe medicine disposal, visit www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
So if you have any type of drug on you that needs to be disposed of, whether it's just prescription medicine that's maybe out of date, or if it is an opioid or fentanyl, please use designated drop boxes at a local police station or hospital, or use the deterra bags, which will dissolve the medications properly where it cannot harm you or anyone else. If you're unsure whether or not you should dispose of certain drugs, it doesn't hurt to seek advice of a healthcare professional or even a parent or guardian. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And as always, if you come across a substance which you are unaware of, do not touch it or try to handle it yourself. Call law enforcement so they can properly handle and remove the substance, because even touching something like fentanyl could cause a reaction which could be fatal. We cannot stress this enough. If you or someone you know is using opioids, please never leave them alone. Having someone nearby can be a lifeline in case of an emergency. Please don't be fooled. If you know someone is handing out what they claim to be oxys, these are not pure opioids. They are more than likely counterfeit pills which could be laced with fentanyl. True oxys like oxycodone can cost hundreds of dollars, and no one's just going to be handing those out. So in general, never take or use something which is not prescribed to you by your doctor. The risk is too high and your life is too important. Opioid overdose is unfortunately common, and so many people are either unaware of what's going on or the victims themselves are alone while using the drugs. There is a product on the market that can help stop opioid overdose in its tracks, but you have to act fast. Let's watch a short clip to learn more about how we can prevent an opioid overdose.
People are dying every day from opioid overdose. Parents and children, friends and neighbors. But Naloxone can help. Naloxone is a safe and effective rescue medication that reverses the effects of opioids and saves lives. To understand how Naloxone can stop and reverse the effects of an opioid overdose, it's helpful to see how opioids work in the body. Opioids are agonists. This means they bind to and activate specific receptors in the body, including the brain, brainstem, and spinal cord. When these receptors are activated, people experience the effects produced by opioids, such as pain relief, euphoria, calmness, relaxation, and slowed breathing. Taking too many opioids causes so many receptors to fill and activate that breathing may become dangerously slow and even stop. This is how an opioid overdose happens, and this is where Naloxone can help. Naloxone has a strong affinity to opioid receptors, more so than most prescription opioids and heroin. But unlike opioids, Naloxone is an antagonist. This means it attaches to opioid receptors without activating them. So when Naloxone is administered during an overdose, it knocks the opioids responsible out of the way and allows breathing to normalize. Naloxone can be administered through an injection or a nasal spray. It usually starts working within a few minutes and lasts from 30 to 90 minutes. While one dose of Naloxone can reverse an overdose, sometimes multiple doses are needed. especially in cases involving extremely potent opioids like fentanyl, or opioids that stay in the body longer than naloxone. Naloxone is very safe in single or multiple doses. It may produce withdrawal symptoms in people with opioid dependence, but it has no abuse potential and cannot cause an overdose. It's important to remember that naloxone is opioid-specific. It has no effect on an overdose caused solely by non-opioid substances like benzodiazepines or alcohol. At the same time, people shouldn't be afraid to use naloxone when the cause of an overdose is unknown. If opioids were not involved in an overdose, it won't cause any harm. If opioids were involved, naloxone can save a life.
So, naloxone can and has saved many lives, but people need to be aware of it and how to use it. Nearly 50,000 people died from an opioid-involved overdose in 2019. One study found that 1 out of every 3 opioid overdoses had bystanders present at the time of these deaths, yet sadly they lack the knowledge or the ability to help. Naloxone can be purchased at a pharmacy, however, emergency responders should have naloxone on hand, which is why you should always call 911 in case of an emergency. If you or someone you know is struggling with opioid misuse, there is help available. Reach out to support networks, helplines, and local resources that can guide you on a path to recovery. Understanding the dangers of opioids and fentanyl is crucial to safeguard our communities. By raising awareness, educating others, and fostering open conversations, we can make a significant impact.
Opioid addiction can happen to anyone, and it can start with misusing prescription pain medications, like oxycodone and hydrocodone.
Pills were going around at this party. I was curious and wanted to give it a try. After the first time, I knew I wanted more.
I was going through a hard time, and a friend offered me some oxys. She said they'd help me cope. I started craving them every day. I bought pills from friends and took them from family members. I wish I had asked for help before I almost died from an overdose.
It all started when I was prescribed opioids for an injury. At first, I took a few extra pills to cope with the pain, but then I couldn't stop. I put opioids before my job and even my family.
Prescription opioids are one way to safely control pain when used as prescribed, but misusing them may lead to addiction. Opioids change your brain chemistry, affecting how it processes pain and emotions. You might experience withdrawal symptoms or feel sick when you stop taking them. If you don't get opioids directly from a pharmacy, you can't know for sure what's in them. Counterfeit pills are increasingly common and often look just like the real thing. Fentanyl, an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin, may be mixed into counterfeit pills. Even in small doses, fentanyl can cause a life-threatening overdose. Here's how you can reduce your risk. Naloxone is a medication that can reverse an opioid overdose. Keeping it on hand could mean the difference between life and death, for you or someone else. Naloxone is available at pharmacies in Texas without a prescription. To protect yourself from addiction and overdose, never misuse prescription opioids, especially alone. If you're worried you may have an addiction, reach out to someone you trust for help. Opioid addiction is a disease that can affect anyone, and everyone deserves help. Treatment is available, and recovery is possible. Learn more at txopioidresponse.org.
I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. Together we can work toward a safer and healthier future, free from the deadly deception of opioids and fentanyl. If you need assistance or know someone who does, don't hesitate to reach out. Remember, help is available, and you are not alone. If you are able to, we would love for this video to be shared with friends and family so more people can be aware of the dangers of opioids and fentanyl. Because together, we can spread awareness and save lives.